All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, it won't come as much of a surprise to anyone after watching the disastrous Chris Wallace interview with Trump earlier in this show, but his bid for the re-election to the presidency is on serious life support right now. His campaign is completely rudderless in their bid to pin something to Joe Biden, which will stick with the American public and consider even giving Trump another 4 years in office. And as covered here extensively in the last few days, this is because most people literally just do not care about much else than coronavirus right now. And to the extent they care about anything else right now, they care about the economy. His presidency is faltering on both counts. This was best on display with the release of a new Fox News poll, which captures the entire campaign. The Fox News poll finds that the top issue at the minds of voters is coronavirus by a mile, with 29% of all respondents saying it is the most important issue facing the country, and the next issue being the economy at 15%. With coronavirus in particular, Trump's numbers are absolutely brutal. Only 8% of the American public says coronavirus is under control. And a stunning 51% say the virus is, quote, not at all under control. That's especially bad for Trump because it represents a 18-point increase in the number who say that the virus is out of hand since June 2020. So the coronavirus is at the top of American voters' minds. They think the situation is not under control whatsoever. They disapprove of Trump's handling of the virus by a 2-to-1 margin in almost every single recent poll, and things are even worse when you compare it directly with Biden. New ABC News poll finds that Biden now leads Trump by 20 points on who they trust most to handle the virus. So just to give you an idea of how much of a lead that Trump has blown here, that number was essentially tied in late March. And on the second most pressing issue facing voters, Trump is doing slightly better with an approximate tie on who would do a better job of handling the economy. But again, has significantly blown a lead of several points in February when he held a nearly double-digit lead over Biden on that issue. So clearly, things are dire for Trump. You can say the polls are fake, and I could say, well, if the polls are statistically as fake as they were in 2016, then Biden will still win with approximately 300 electoral votes. But nobody looking at this state of affairs will tell you this is good. Talk off the record to any high-level Republican in Washington, every single one of them will tell you the truth. Trump looks like he's sunk. Now, granted, many of these were the same fools who said the same thing in 2016. So why exactly is this time so different? The reason is that his campaign and his White House are simply not connecting on the majoritarian issues that they were so masterfully able to do so in 2016. When Hillary was talking about putting coal miners out of work, Trump was talking about bringing back coal. When Hillary was trying to explain away her position on TPP, Trump was talking about rebuilding Detroit. And when Hillary was defending her vote for the Iraq War, Trump was saying it's time to bring the troops home. That is how you pull yourself out of a hole, espousing 50+1 issues held by the American public which have no representation in Washington. The other word for that is populism. But what we see on display today is a grotesque mixture of personal narcissism mixed with traditional GOP messaging put out by the fools who looked at Paul Ryan and said, hey, you know what? Americans are really going to love that. Just take a look at this latest Trump ad. I barely have words for how dumb it is. I cannot play the heavy Linkin Park music, which it is scored to for copyrights reasons, but it is essentially just a hype montage of Trump doing cool stuff and being president. And look, I like warships, and I think the office of Commander-in-Chief is cool. And it's also great that there are adoring fans of the president. But what in the hell exactly does that have to do with winning re-election? Things get worse even when you look at the other material that the Trump campaign is putting out. Let's put that on there on the screen. Dan Scavino, a senior advisor to Trump, whose office I've seen that is literally right outside the Oval Office, tweeted out this graphic. What does socialism have to do with anything right now? In fact, arguing against aggressive government programs and intervention in the economy during the worst crisis since the Great Depression seems like the opposite strategy to pursue. This type of communication is basically a parody of what moronic libertarians in colleges are posting on meme boards. And finally, last but not least, my personal favorite, as many of you know, is the release I got from the Trump campaign on Friday saying, quote, "No boat parades, enthusiasm for Joe Biden is sinking," once again revealing that for some reason, The Trump campaign and the president himself seem to believe that because they can excite South Carolina or Florida voters, that it is somehow a barometer of success. The text of the email itself was filled with statistics about how nobody is excited to vote for Joe Biden, which is true. But it ends up saying, quote, nobody is throwing a boat parade for him anytime soon. And of course, when you set such a ridiculous barometer of success, people are going to rub your nose in it equally. Because what did people spot on the Potomac River this weekend? Well, a Joe Biden flag on a boat, of course. So he's screwed. Now he's losing the boat demographic. No, it's not losing the boat demographic because the entire boat demographic is stupid. It's not representative of the American public.
There is no boat demographic.
I mean, how unbelievable is it? 29% of the public. You said this here, which is so insightful. I never thought we'd see an election like this ever again. I never thought we would see an election where it's not political, it's not divisive. There's a chief goal. Everybody wants this thing to be over, or at the very least, they want somebody to have a handle on it. And I was reading, actually, Freedom from Fear. It's a book about the history of the Great Depression. In 1935, the economy was not back. It was not good. FDR, much of the New Deal, the great success of the New Deal, had not even happened. The American public trusted FDR and Roosevelt to deliver because they felt this man is taking it seriously. He is doing everything inhumanly possible in order to get us out of this Great Depression. It's like with Cuomo, right? You don't even have to be good at what you did, and you can still have an 80% approval rating if the American public believes that you are taking it seriously, doing everything that you can. That's why people hated Hoover, not because they felt, it's not his job to fix it. You can't fix it, right? Something that momentous. But because they were like, he is out of step with the reality of my daily life. That is where Trump is right now. I think he's in Hoover territory. I really do.
I do too. And we put up in the previous block the disparity between where Trump is versus Biden in the polls versus Hillary last time around. So last time, the same poll, he was down only 4 points. So basically within that margin of error, or where the polls could be a little bit off, and ultimately you're able to pull it off. That same poll now he's down by 15 points.
And so Hillary's +4 in that last one.
And by the way, they just keep going in this same direction, and the virus continues to spiral out of control. And we are not even out of the first wave yet, let alone the second wave, let alone we're looking towards school years now, where once again, because we are in such bad shape, so many schools are going to remain closed, which is such a problem for kids, for parents, for entire communities, teachers, everyone else. And you touched on something that I really think is profoundly important and interesting in this political dynamic, which is in 2016, not only did Trump have some of the right positions on the issues, he was able to frame what the entire conversation was about. And that's basically the whole ball game in politics. If you can make your opponent fight on your ground where you're strongest, then you are going to be in an incredibly strong position and a very difficult position to beat. So what was he able to frame the debate on? Trade, really centrally corruption. I mean, that was like such a core part of his argument, right? And that was a positive for him because the idea was, I'm a rich guy, you can't buy me off, right? And meanwhile, Hillary Clinton is the exact opposite of that. She's the swamp. She's everything that you hate about politics. And then he had these issues like immigration that were really exciting and energizing for his base. So he was able to totally control the conversation. And you could see it happening in real time. I mean, it was very frustrating to people like, all the cable news networks love to play his rallies, and he'd call in on the phone whenever he felt like it, and they were going crazy over everything that he said. And so Hillary Clinton just kind of had to respond to whatever he was putting out there. Well, now you have an issue which is so central, which infects and impacts every aspect of people's lives. You can't turn the channel on that. You're not going to distract people or redirect the conversation to socialism or statues or any of the things that they've tried that they really would rather be talking about. It's just not going to work. You cannot avoid this monster in the room. The polling data that you lay out makes that entirely clear, as if it shouldn't. It's totally obvious anyway.
And what do I have in front of me? Mike Pence just gave an interview to Breitbart. He says, quote, the socialist label is going to stick to Joe Biden in 2020. Are you out of your mind? It's just not. I can tell you, like, no, it won't. It's just not going to. And
even if it did, it's not even that effective because, like you said, people actually want the government to do more.
They're like, wait, so you're saying Biden again?
You're like, maybe he'll give me health care. Great.
What did Trump run on in 2016? Buy American. right now, his administration doesn't have a Buy American order because they're afraid that China or corporate America is going to get upset. So Joe Biden rolls out a $700 billion Buy American plan. I don't agree with some of the plan, but I'd rather have a Buy American plan than somebody who's not doing Buy American, and so would most of the country. Again, when you're talking about Corona, all anybody wants is to see like you're taking it seriously. Be like, this is what we're doing with testing. This is what we're doing. There's a terrific story in the New York Times over the weekend about in April, by the way, when Trump's polls really went off a cliff, White House devised a strategy to try and push all authority onto the states. Be like, you know what, we're going to give the states the empowerment, and then we're just not going to take it all that much seriously. Mark Meadows, the chief of staff in the New York Times, talking about how he wants to divert all attention away from coronavirus. Viewers of this show, could you divert your attention away from something that governs your every act of daily life? I moved this weekend, right? You can't touch anything. Everybody's wearing masks. The entire process is different, right? Everything you do, every normal task, going to the grocery store, going to school, nobody knows if they're going back to school, everything that you love in your life, your elderly parents, maybe not able to visit them. Maybe you had a vacation plan. I have friends who have canceled weddings. I mean, I can go all the way down the line. How are you going to distract from that? You can't. And it all depends on one thing, the government's handling of coronavirus. That's it. And they're screwing that up.
Completely screwing it up. They wanted to wish it away. They wanted to divert the blame to the state governors or to China. And look, we're tough on China here. Nobody says they handled it perfectly. But people want to see what you're doing right now in their lives.
I'm glad they did the travel ban in January.
Fine. That was January. A long time ago, right?
It's July 20th. People.
What are you doing today, right? And so unless they actually take this thing seriously, and look, here's the thing. Time is ticking down.
Yeah, I know.
And with this thing, you don't get it under control like that, right? They have made so many missteps at this point. They have been such a failure on every level, on a health level, on an economic level, on just being able to function as a country level. It's going to be increasingly hard to actually turn this thing around. Anything can happen, but honestly, time is starting to run pretty short.
It is. And it's just last thing here, which is that a lot of these Republicans, they like to blame the government. They're like, oh, the CDC screwed up. That's all true. It's all true, which is that the entire organs of government, all of that. But you know what? In times of crisis, what it is about using what you've got. And like I said, people will forgive subpar results if they feel that you did everything you possibly could in order to save people's lives, in order to take something seriously. They will not forgive whenever they appear negligence, and that is basically what we have in front of us. Anyway, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.